Okay, it's live now. Good. So let me bring up the PowerPoint for today. Do you have any questions, guys, before we start? No questions? Can you hear me?
Yes,
Yes, we can.
loud and clear.
Okay. Sometimes I think that you guys cannot hear me because I just hear silence. A very symmetry silence. A very dreadful one. Okay, so like I said before, we're gonna talk about security today, module 3, which is about security, privacy, compliance, and trust. Okay, so for 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 those interested in security in Azure, okay, there's a specialty for security. This is a module that's very interesting because that's what helps you harden your infrastructure, make it more secure against attacks. Because, like we said before, attacks will never stop. There'll always be people trying to, penetrate the system, whatever system it is. Even today, we are streaming this class. You never know. There must be someone in the middle trying to hack this room, this um, Zoom stream. There were like a few months ago, there were some issues with Zoom. There were some people that were, getting information from the users, and then Zoom had to come up with some features to protect Zoom a little bit more. Okay. In fact, there are some companies that don't recommend Zoom at all to be used for meetings and all that. They go with WebEx or Teams or other um, software applications that people use for meetings. Okay. So lesson 1 is learning objectives, right? What are the learning objectives of this module? Is understand and describe how to secure network connectivity in Microsoft Azure, understand and describe core Azure identity services, understand and describe security tools and features, understand and describe Azure governance methodologies, understand and describe monitoring and reporting in Azure, and understand and describe privacy, compliance, and data protection standards in Azure. Guys, have you stopped for a minute to think that the last class is next week? Have you stopped for a minute? Because when you think about it, it's time flies, right? It seems that we started yesterday and we almost finished with the third week. Okay, so and then your exam is going to be after the week after on Monday. Okay, think about it. Okay, lesson 2: security network connectivity. Okay, so here we have defense in depth. We have several layers. We have the data layer, application layer, compute, network, perimeter, identity, and access, physical security. Okay, this is conceptual. Okay, this is to be kept at a high level. Okay, this is now low level. By high level, I mean that is, it doesn't go in depth. It's just superficial. Like a very simple explanation of this. Okay, so this explains how security options can be targeted at every single layer. Okay, so a layer approach to securing computer systems provide multiple levels of protection. Attacks against one layer are isolated from subsequent layers. So there's like an isolation for every single layer. So the fact that the data layer is attacked doesn't mean that the application layer is attacked too. Okay, so it's very good, a very good idea and very effective to have protection at every single layer. So one layer doesn't affect the other one when it's attacked. Okay. Now, in the shared security, we have here responsibility. We get back to on-premises, IaaS, PaaS, and SaaS. Okay, we go back to that because we saw that in the first module 1. Okay, so like it says here, migrating from customer control to cloud-based data center shift this responsibility of security. Of course, you know, when you have your data on premises, the level of security is different than if your data is on the cloud. So the responsibility changes, it shifts. So this is a comparable to the shared responsibility slide that we saw before, but it's more specific to security. Okay. Now, security becomes a shared concern between cloud providers and customers. Of course, who protects the data? You or the cloud provider? Who protects your data? You or the cloud provider? That's the question. Does anyone have an answer?
It sounds like it's shared.
Who has another opinion?
Doesn't it depend on where the data is stored? I mean, if it's
Yeah,
stored in the cloud, I would think it's a shared responsibility.
Yeah, but if it is in the cloud, who protects the data? I want to hear some answers. People are answering in the chat. Let me see.
This is the provider.
Do you
Customer.
guys, do you guys think it's the provider?
Customer protects the data, cloud service provider protect the storage.
Okay.
Well, guys, I can tell you that the provider will never mess up with your data. Your data is your problem. You're the one that have to create access management controls. You're the one that has to create password, credentials. You're the one that have to limit access. You're the one that have to create roles. And you're the one that have to create groups and users, all that. That's your responsibility. The data, when it's in the cloud, it's your responsibility. The provider provides the resources, you protect your data. Okay, that's very important. It is standard in every single provider. It's not only in Azure. AWS is the same. You're responsible for your data. AWS is responsible for providing the resources to protect your data. But that's not your data. Okay? Of course, the cloud provider will provide all the resources because that's why they are the cloud provider. But you're the one that have to implement those resources and implement strategies to protect your data. So basically, it's your sole responsibility. Okay? It's not a concern. Okay? When it comes to the data as such, right? As such, it's your responsibility. Now, security is a shared responsibility. Security. I'm not talking about data. Your data is your data. So you will never see Azure penetrating your data or trying to play with your data. That's your data. Okay? They don't touch your data. Okay? They give you a section that says access control. You have to use it. They give you a section that says firewall. You have to use it. They give you a section that has security groups. You have to use it. Okay? They give you a section where you have to open ports or close ports. You have to use it. Okay? They provide the resources. You implement it. Okay? Now, that's shared. That's shared. But when I talk about data, it's your responsibility. Okay? So here we have responsibility on premises and all these guys, the deployment models that we talked about before. Infrastructure as a service, platform as a service, and software as a service. So data governance and rights management on premises. You see here? Customer. who governs the data? Who manage the risks, the rights of the data? The customer only. Okay? Azure has nothing to do with that. It's your responsibility only, alone, not there. The client endpoints is your responsibility as a customer. Account and access management is your responsibility as a customer. You see here, these three sections here, points, the customer is responsible for the whole thing. Now, when it comes to identity and directory infrastructure, you talk about infrastructure, okay? This is something more encompassing, wider, bigger. It's the bigger picture. Then it's share, okay? It's like I said before, security is a share responsibility model. But when it comes to data, access to your resources, endpoints, all that is your responsibility only, okay? So this is a share 50-50 share here, responsibility model when it comes to identity and directory infrastructure. So we have here the customer for on-premises and infrastructure as a service, but then when it comes to platform as a service, it's shared. It's both of them, Microsoft and the customer, okay? And then it's solely Microsoft responsibility when it comes to software as a service. In a software as a service, you don't control anything. You don't have control of anything. The only thing that you have to do is create an account. In the case of Office 365 or Dropbox or Google Drive, whatever, you have to create your user and password, and that's it, okay? But you don't have control of anything else. You don't have control of anything else. It's all controlled and managed by the provider, okay? Now, when it comes to the application, you have control on premises and infrastructure as a service, right? But this is share again. So we can just draw the conclusion that for identity and directory infrastructure, application and network controls is the same thing, the same share responsibility model, same thing. Okay. Now, when it comes to, operating systems, if you are on premises, then you can install operating systems. You can update the operating system. You can do whatever you want, right? And if it is infrastructure as service, let's say in a virtual machine, for example, you can install the operating system. Remember when we create a virtual machine, we select the image, right? We select a Linux image or a Windows image, right? So we have control of the operating system, right? Now, when it comes to platform as a service, it is something that you don't have control on the operating system. You don't have control of that. In this case, a platform as a service is like a function that you put the code and that's it. It will run for you. Like a web app. A web app, you just select the language that they're going to use, the platform they're going to use, and that's it. You don't have control on the operating system. Okay? Same with software as service. It's controlled completely by Azure. When it comes to physical hosts, this makes sense, right? You only have control when you are on premises because it's your computers, it's your routers, everything, your appliances, right? Your physical appliances, your physical computers. You have control of that. But when it comes to the deployment models, you have no control whatsoever because, infrastructure as a service is a virtual machine and you don't have a physical machine with you. The physical machine is in a data center, in an Azure data center. They are the ones that control the physical server, not you, okay? The same applies to platform as a service and software as a service, okay? Now, physical network, same thing. And on premises, you have all the control. You have all the routers, the switches, the hubs, everything that you're using for your network. But when it comes to this deployment models, you lose complete control over that, okay? Same with the physical data center. So I think that the last three make absolute sense, that we have no control on them when they are in the cloud. We have no control over them, Okay, so when you have a chance today after class or tomorrow before Friday or on Friday, whatever, before the exam, take a look at this chart table and try to not memorize everything, but try to understand how security is shared in the Azure cloud, how they share it, what things their customer is responsible for, and what things Azure is responsible for. Okay? Don't forget that when it comes to data, you have complete control. Okay? Azure will not do anything with your data. Okay? Now, when it have to do with identity and directory infrastructure is when things start to change. Okay? Now, Azure Firewall, it's a very important service, right? A very important service that you should remember because it's one of the services that is mostly used for security in Azure. Super important. Okay, it's stateful. It means that it doesn't keep track of the state. Okay, so it doesn't know where it's coming from and when it's going to. It's stateful. I'm sorry. My bad. It's all the opposite. It keeps track. It keeps track of the state. Stateless is the one that doesn't keep track of the state. This one keeps track of the state, so it will understand what's coming in, right, and understand what's coming out. Okay, through the firewall. It's managed by Azure, so you don't have to do anything about it. It's managed by Azure. It's part of the firewall as a service, FAS, and it grants or denies server access based on originating IP address to protect network resources. So you can work on this. You can whitelist IP addresses and just let those whitelisted ones come in. Just access the network, or you can just blacklist them and then reject them when they try to access the resources. Okay, so it applies inbound and outbound traffic filter rules. You have rules of the traffic coming in, and you have rules for the traffic going out, and then you, based on your rules, the traffic will be either allowed or denied. Okay, it has built-in high availability, so you have native HA. It means that it will be highly available. So like different firewalls, more than one working in your infrastructure. So one is down, the other firewalls that will be there to continue working. So that's what high availability means. Unrestricted cloud scalability, so it is unlimited. It can scale. Okay, it can grow and grow and grow. The more resources you create, the more firewall can be needed for your application, and then you can use it, right? Uses Azure Monitor logging. When it comes to monitor, just remember CloudWatch in AWS. CloudWatch and Azure Monitor, they do the same thing. So this is the one that triggers events. This is the one that monitors your resources for health. This is the one that make influence on sending notifications to an administrator, for example. So it says here as a note, Azure Application Gateway also provides firewall, web application firewall, also known as WAF, and WAF provides centralized inbound protection for your web applications. Okay, so the application gateway, it's also known as the application load balancer. So keep that in mind. There's a link, guys, I can provide you for the Azure Firewall. Okay, it's something that I can put here in the chat if you want to have it. So I put it in the chat. So guys, are you understanding? I want to hear some voices because it seems that I'm talking to myself. Are you understanding this?
Yes.
So far.
Yes, so far.
Yes, we are.
It's just a matter of, it's just very conceptual. It's not something complicated or complex. Just and it's pretty standard across the board for different providers. Okay. So very, very, very common type of attack. Very common. Sometimes hackers, they try to overwhelm your system, right? By sending a lot of requests to your system, and the system is overwhelmed, and then it doesn't know what to do with so much, especially when the system is not scalable, and it cannot grow. So it's a lot of requests, and it doesn't know what to do. And then the system is so busy trying to cope with those requests that it cannot offer the services to the real actual users. That's why it denies the service to those users, because it cannot. It's so overwhelmed with the fake requests that it cannot assist the actual users. Okay, so it becomes overwhelmed and exhausting network resources, making the app slow and unresponsive. Imagine if let's say that your system can process, let's say, 1,000 requests per second. And imagine that someone intentionally starts sending requests and it sends 3,000 per second. Your system cannot cope with that, because the system is designed to cope with 1,000 requests per second, and that's it. That's your system, right? That you did some analysis, before creating a system, and you thought that the traffic was that low, 1,000 requests per second, and then you create a system that was capable of, coping with that amount of requests and not more than that. And you made a mistake. You didn't make it scalable. Okay. So let's say that someone tries to send 4,000 requests per second. What are you going to do? So your system becomes overwhelmed and it's unresponsive. Have you noticed some websites that you try to access and they don't respond? It's spinning, and the page doesn't load. So that's very frustrating, right? And you lose a lot of money at that time, because if you have for example, a retail store and you're selling products, and your website is so unresponsive and slow, you're going to lose customers. Customer will leave your website and go to another website, unless you're selling a unique product that only you have and nobody else has it. So they will have to come back to you anyways. But if you're selling a pretty standard product, you lost money right there, right then. All right. So basic service tier is automatically enabled in Azure. Standard service tiers adds mitigation capabilities. When you have this kind of protection, usually you have a basic tier and a standard tier or advanced tier. Okay, so the basic is just automatically enabled in Azure. That's free, because it's automatically enabled. It comes with the basic, with the free account. But when it comes to standard, then you have other capabilities. You have other features. It gives you more security. So that may come with an extra cost. Okay. So standard service tier adds mitigation capabilities tuned to protect Azure virtual network resources. Okay. This is something that, you want to make your system more secure, then you have to pay extra. Okay. Because sometimes the basic tier doesn't work well when it comes to very strong attacks. Then you may need something better. Okay, so it all depends on what data you have. Okay, if your data is very sensitive, then you should have a very effective system, to detect all those attacks on time and be able to remediate that. Okay, I have a link here for Azure DDoS protection. So I'm gonna put it here in the chat. Okay. Right. So it's there in the chat. Next slide. So we have the network security network security groups. Okay. So this is the guy that we have used so far. Seems like it wants to rain. Okay, so here we have, let me see if I have, I don't think I have any virtual machine running here. If I did, I would have a lot of money. Oh, this is not the, oh, go on. Let me sign out and get the right account. Moment. Let me see if I have one virtual machine here. I don't have any. Okay. Let me create one real quick. Just real quick. Let me see here if I can use any guy here. Just give it a name. This is, you see here, we have control of the operating system we are choosing. Here we can choose Windows or Linux. Let me choose Windows. And let me give it a name here. Okay. And then give a password here. I guess by now, guys, you should know how to create a virtual machine. Because we created a few. Okay. So I'm gonna just keep through this and not select any of these guys here. I think it passed the validation, and then I will create the virtual machine. Have any of one of you lost money already, being charged? Who's still keeping the $100 for the credit? My case, out of 200, I have spent $17.09. Who's the Alva? Yes, $40 left. Wow. You, Carlos, have $50 left. Wow, you have used it a lot. Did you leave any resource running? Because it looks like probably you left something running.
I deleted them afterwards. So I would have to check again.
Okay. Yeah, Brian, you have to do that. You have to delete storage groups and storage accounts. Yeah, don't leave anything unnecessarily running because you're going to be charged for that. It's not going to be your money, but you're going to lose the money. Anyways, you have, Roger, you haven't used that at all. Anyways, you have only 30 days to use that, guys. After 30 days, it would disappear. Okay. $77 remaining. Wow. Okay. Yeah, Roger is really saving money. He's taking some time to yes, Roger, you have to give us the secret. Yeah, that's what it is. As soon as you finish, delete everything. You don't need that there. So we're waiting for this virtual machine to be deployed completely. It's taking longer. I don't know why. I shouldn't take that long. I don't know why this is taking so long. Okay, let's continue in the meantime. So here with the security network, network security group, we set inbound and outbound rules to filter by source and destination IP, port, and protocol. Okay, we can add multiple rules as needed within the subscription limits. And Azure applies default baseline security rules to new network security groups. You can override default rules with new higher priority rules. Okay, this is taking longer. So I created the network interface, I created the network security group. Let me come here to the network security group. Okay, I don't have to wait for that. It's right here. Okay, this is, we've seen this before. This is the part when you create a rule here and you open a port. Okay, like it says here, you set inbound and outbound rules. So you have the inbound rule here, inbound, and you have the outbound rule here. Okay. So a security group is stable, okay, but still you can have some rules here, and it goes from the lowest number to the highest. That's the priority, right? So if I create a 200 rule here that says RDP is closed, or I just put the source, my IP address, this one is not going to be taken into account. Okay. I think that so if I put here, let's say that it's going to be priority to 250, let's say, for example, and this is going to be RDP. Okay. And the source here is going to be an IP address. Let's say that is going to be 192.168.23.1. Okay. And then I say 5389. And then I say here, name, restrict. Access via port 3389. And then I do this, right? I'll just wait for it until it's added. Okay, so here, and this is the way it works, guys. Here you have a 300 priority, right? And we have a rule here that allows every single source, right? Every single source into our machine via this port, right? But before that one, we have a lower one, which means higher priority that restricts the access to this IP address only. And let me edit this. No, I cannot edit it. All right, let me edit it here. Let me put this because this is not correct. It should be like that. Okay. So what this does is -32 means only one IP address, right? So this one IP address is the only one that can access my remote computer through RDP. Okay, purple. Okay, so now this one is going to be prioritized over this one because it has a lower number here, right? So basically, this will be discarded. It's going to be eliminated, basically. Stays there, but when it comes to this one has no validity anymore. This one is not valid anymore. It's just no. Okay? So that's the way it works with the security groups. Okay? Application security groups provides for the grouping of servers with similar port filtering. Let me see one moment. Let me for this one, with the network security group, I have a link that I want to share with you guys. So I'm gonna put it here in the chat before I forget. Okay. I hope you guys copying the links that I'm posting. So application security groups, they provide for the grouping of servers with similar ports, filtering requirements, and group together servers with similar functions such as web servers. Okay. Allows you to reuse your security policy at scale without manual maintenance of explicit IP addresses, and handles the complexity of explicit IP addresses and multiple rule sets, allowing you to focus on your business logic. Okay, so you don't have to worry about security. You just worry about just making your business more effective for your customers. All right, let me just copy this guy here. And I think that so it enables you to configure network security as a natural extension of the application. So this security group is more of an application specific to an application, okay? It allows you to group virtual machines and define network security policies based on those groups. So you can reuse, this is what we read before. So the traffic is evaluated. You can deploy resources from several Azure services into an Azure virtual network. For a complete list, see this, and this is the way it works. So the following pictures illustrates different scenarios of how network group security groups might be deployed to allow network traffic to and from the internet over TCP port 80. All right. Two virtual machines here, and this is subnet 1. One virtual machine is subnet 2. One virtual machine is subnet 3. So we have a network security group here. That's for subnet 2. That's why it's called security group network 2. And then we have another one here, and then we have another one here. So with this one works at the network level, and this one here works at the application level. So we can have several security groups that can work at different levels, and that's an extra layer of security for your applications. Okay. Okay. You come through the network. You come through the network. That's okay. Now you have to come through the application security group. Let's see if it is okay for me. It depends on the rules that I have. Okay. That's how it works. So how do we choose? By the way, let me copy that one as well. Okay. For the security, for the application security group. Okay, I'm gonna ask someone here to talk about the meaning of stateful. Someone that has that took my class before, and we talked about stateful. Can someone elaborate on that? Omar is asking about that. Come on, guys. There are guys here that passed both the cloud practitioner and the solutions architect. You should know that by now. What is the meaning of stateful?
So stateful means that you're basically, it's like if you go in a house and you basically ring the doorbell and someone allows you in, then you can go back out and you don't have to have like someone opening the door for you. You can just walk right on out.
Yeah.
So basically,
Yes.
that's the analogy that I use for stateful and stateless. So.
Yeah, that's why Omar asked the other guys. That's why. Okay, so when it comes to security groups, stateful means that you don't have to create an outbound rule when you already have an inbound rule. So when the traffic comes in, it doesn't have to be checked before it goes out because it's stateful. It means the security group keeps track of the state. It's like Lani said, if I go to your house, right? If I just go to your house, knock on the door, you open the door for me, and then ask for ID. I show you my ID. You know who I am. I enter my house, your house. I stay there for a while, and then I come out. I don't have to show you my ID again because you already know who I am, right? You keep the state of me. You keep my state. You keep my information, right? So when you're stateless, it means that you don't keep the state. I have to identify myself when I go in. I have to identify myself when I go out. So in the case of NACLs, network access security lists, they are stateless. It means that you have to create an inbound rule as well as an outbound rule because it's stateless, right? Now, in the case of the stateful firewall, it means that it is a network firewall that tracks the operating state and characteristics of the network connections while they traverse it. So all the connections that go through that network, you keep the state of those connections. That's why it's stateful, right? So the firewall is configured to distinguish legitimate network packets for different types of connections, okay? So it is configured to keep the state of every single packet that goes by and comes back. Everything, it keeps the state of all that. That's why it's called stateful firewall, okay? The operating system is always tracked as the packets traverse the network. So that's what it means, Omar. Does that answer your question, Omar? It's when you have a sign-in feature in your website, right? When you sign in, it says on the top right corner, it says, welcome Omaro or welcome Dunieski, right? And then you can go from page to page, you can navigate, you know, and you still see welcome Dunieski because it keeps the state. It keeps the state. It knows who I am from beginning to end until I log out. So you're keeping the state, right? That's what it means. In other words, you're keeping a session open. When you log in, a session is open for you that has a session ID, right? And a cookie ID and all things that identify you as a logged in user. That's what it means. It keeps the state, right? So if you don't want to keep the state of anything, don't have a login session, and that's it. Or don't just keep the track, or don't have a database, right? If you have a database, then you keep it the state. You're saving information there, right? Now, choosing Azure Network Security Solutions. So Azure supports combined network security solutions. For example, you can have a network security group with Azure Firewall. You can have a web application firewall with Azure Firewall. So you can have those combinations, right? So you can just remediate attacks through the security groups with IPs that computers that try to access resources, or probably DDoS attacks, or probably SQL injection, all those kinds of attacks. You can have a combination of these resources. Of course, the more resources you have, the more you're going to pay. Basically, these resources, they always have a basic and advanced features. And most of the time, the basic feature is free. Most of the time, it's already included in your subscription, right? In the case of Azure, you have to talk about subscription, okay? Okay, so Perimeter layer protects your network boundaries with Azure DDoS protection and Azure Firewall. So this slide uses the defense in depth, perimeter, and network layers as examples. Okay, so now something that you have to consider. Discussing the Azure networking security solutions at each layer is beyond the scope of this course. So you don't have to worry about that. You know how security happens at every single layer. You just need to know that they exist, right? They also have the networking layer that only permits traffic to pass between networked resources with network security groups, inbound and outbound rules. We talked about already the network security groups. Core Azure Identity Services. So we have the first one. Here we're going to talk about this. And guys, don't see it. Let me go back and don't see yours. What is the difference between authentication and authorization?
Authentication, identify the customer, who you are, what you have. So it's identified like password and username and all those kind of stuff. And authorization, what you are supposed to do, what you are allowed to do.
That's authorization?
That is authorization.
Okay, do you guys agree?
Yeah, like permissions to add on to the, but yeah.
Okay. So, yes, like you guys said, authentication is you have to prove that you are who you say you are. Okay, that's authentication, right? And authorization is that you have certain permissions to do something. So you have restrictions, permissions to access resources. That's what it means. Okay. So in this slide, there are two concepts of fundamental to understanding identity and access. Authentication identifies the person or service seeking access to a resource. So you have to authenticate yourself. You have to be able to understand who you are. The system needs to know who you are, and you have to check that you say who you are. You are. I don't know. It's just like a tongue twister, but it is what it is. Okay. So it requests legitimate access credentials. So you can use your credentials. You can use Active Directory credentials. You can use federated credentials. You can use third-party credentials like Google, Facebook, or Amazon, or these guys, whatever third party you're using, it has to be legitimate, right? The basis for creating secure identity and access control principles. Once you are authenticated, then you will be given access to specific resources depending on the level of access that you have. Okay, so now, Omaro, Chris Lucis put something about stateful firewalls there that kind of expands what I said, so you can take a look at it in the chat. It's in the chat. So we also have authorization, which is determining an authenticated person's or services level of access. So define which data they can access and what they can do with it. So I believe that it's one process after the other. In order for you to be authorized, you have to be authenticated. Okay? And not necessarily in order to be authenticated, you have to be authorized. So I think that authentication is the very first step. You have to authenticate yourself. You have to be able to access the system with the correct credentials, and then you can do whatever you're authorized to do. Okay. So authentication is also known as auth-n. Okay. So it's So let me, it's the word off. Okay, one moment. So it's just the word off. Like this. Off N. Okay, that's authentication. That's the way that is also known as. And off C is authorization. Okay, so that's the way they're known as. So whenever you see auth N, that's authentication. Whenever you see auth Z, that's authorization. So they are interchangeable. Okay, so I want to put it in the chat. That's something else, Alva. This is just to identify just the word authentication. That's for identification purposes. Just that. It's not a concept or anything. It's just that some people refer to authentication as authent. It's just another way to call it. Okay. So no questions about authentication authorization. Do you guys understand that? This is one of the questions that you may be asked in an interview that has to do with security. Security is super important for every single company. Even if your position, the position that you're applying for, has nothing to do with security, they may ask you this, because this is, well, I wouldn't say has nothing to do. I would say that it doesn't have to do much with your application or the position you're applying for. They may ask you this because security is highly valuable for a company. Very, very important. Okay. Okay, let me check the chat here. Anyone saying something here? Yes, it is. Perla is everyone's job. That's true. Okay. So we continue. Now we're going to take another one that is very, very, very important. MFA. MFA. So many companies are implementing this. Many companies. Even I hadn't seen this in YouTube, and for my channel, I didn't have to, but I was suggested to just put a two-step authentication process. So that's multi-factor authentication that you can use either a security code, or you can use an authenticator. In my case, I use Google Authenticator. I love Google Authenticator. It's very friendly, user-friendly. And I have it here for my emails. I have it for my domains. I have it for my account. I have it for everything, because that's important. Have you guys ever received an email from your own account without your permission? From your Gmail account without your permission? Have you ever received that? Never?
What type of email?
Like, I don't know, advertising emails being sent from your email to yourself. Never seen that?
No. No, no.
Do you guys live in this world? I have gotten so many emails in my Gmail account being sent from my actual Gmail account to myself by someone else. It's like someone got my password, and my password was really difficult.
Yes.
And they sent me an email from my own email. That's super.
wow.
Yeah. Yeah, but they're sending it to my, yeah, from my own email. That's pretty weird. No, I'm not talking to myself. You're referring to me, Roger? Yeah, it's coming from another. Yeah, it's coming like, it's like an advertisement email, but being sent from my email. No, I'm not talking to myself. Well, the day I do that, you may say I'm crazy. No, I don't do that. I won't be teaching anymore if it happens to me, if I do that without noticing. So we have the other guy. We have Active Directory, which is very, very, before we see multi-factor authentication, we're gonna see Active Directory. I just moved one slide, skipped one slide. This guy is very important too, okay? This is the guy that lets us connect the on-premises directory with the Azure directory. And then people that have access and credentials from their on-premises can still access Azure resources through Active Directory, okay? So in this case, we have a cloud-based identity and access management service, also known as IAM, right? Where you have authentication, employees sign in to access resources. They have single sign-on, SSO. It means that you can sign in, and then across many platforms, you can still have access because one only sign in is enough, okay? Application management, business to business, also known as B2B, business to customer, also known as B2C, identity services, and device management. So there's one section in the Azure portal. Let me see here if I can see that here. In the portal here, we have a section here and Active Directory, where I can, it says where it says here devices, I can manage devices, right? You can connect your computer to your portal, right? You can require multi-factor authentication to join devices, right? So you can do so many things here with this guy here, okay? In that case, I don't have any device here. This is a new account. But before I had a new device, I have my computer, my Windows computer, I could see from here because I was able to just link my computer, my Windows computer to my Azure account, okay? Now this guy here. So this is the multi-factor authentication. So here we discuss what could qualify for each of the items listed. For example, something you know, right? Something you know. Something you know could be what? What could be something you know? Come on, tell me, guy. What could be something you know?
Username, password.
Correct. Okay, that's something you know. Or what else can be something you know? What are other security features or things that they ask you when you are creating an account?
Your first car.
The name of your pet.
That's right. Security questions, right? Security questions. So that's something you know, right? So you provide additional security for your identities by requiring 2 or more elements for full authentication. So when you create an account, you create the username and password, and usually it's 3 or more questions that you have to, security question that you have to select the question and then answer, right? And then you have to remember that. It's really painful when you remember the answer of the question. So then you have to go through a painful process to recover your password, okay? So always remember that. So something that you possess. What could be something that you possess?
A key,
Don't tell me a
An
$20
old car.
identity, a card, a key, like an ID badge.
Are you sure about that?
Are we something you
Or
possess?
something you possess.
This is authentication in the cloud. This is multi-factor authentication. Well, sometimes, yes, you're right, Lanis. Is that you, Lanis?
Yes.
Yes, sometimes, for example, for PayPal, when you change your password, they ask you for your full card number. So you have to remember what card number you added to the PayPal account, and they ask you for the card number so you can change your password. That is correct. That is true.
Now for a key, I mean like a security key that they give you, that they email to you or text to you, and you have to enter that, and only you would have that. No one else could.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, that's true. That's true. But something that you possess, it's more specific to a device. To a device.
Cell phone.
Okay. For example, when you have the authenticator, right? You have a multi-factor authenticator with multi-factor authentication with Google Authenticator. What would happen if you lose your phone?
you don't have you'll lose that you'll lose that information. You can't really authenticate.
Because it is asking you for that code, right? And you don't have
Yeah, and you have to find it on something. You have to find it on your phone.
Okay, so something you possess might be a mobile application that receives a notification, or it could be a token generating device. What is a token generating device? Google Authenticator. Right. Good. Now, something you are. What do you think it could be? It could be the answer for that one. Something you are.
Your email?
Your email? Something you are?
I guess if you're like a user, like I guess maybe if you're identifying as a user,
Well,
what are
something
your
you are.
credentials as the user? So like you're an
something-
administrator.
Okay, something you are typically refers to some sort of a biometric property, or fingerprint, or face scan, right? Used on many devices. All right, so something you know is a password or an answer to a security question. Something you possess could be a mobile app that receives a notification or a token generating device, and something you are can be some sort of a biometric like face ID, fingerprints, and face recognition on some of the devices. Okay? Because it's something you are. Okay? And your face is your face. That's you, right? And a fingerprint is you, right? It's something you are. Let me put this in the chat. This is about Active Directory. And now I'm gonna put here, this is about, guys, I hope you're copying this because this is important. I'm gonna put here the link for multi-factor authentication. Okay, there you go. Yes, why not, Florentina? That makes sense. QR can be something you know. Yeah. Yeah, a QR may be like a password. It's only specific to something. Yeah, it's not pretty common. More common is a password or a security question, because, you know, when you have a QR, that involves another appliance that has to scan that code, right? But when you have a password, it's very simple. It's just a password or security question that you have to answer. Right? There are many ways. It's just we're talking about, you know, about the most common ones. Okay. Security tools and features. Right. So there's something called in Azure, something called the Azure Security Center. Okay. It's a monitoring service that provides threat protection across all Azure and on-premises and services. Okay. Provide security recommendations based on your configuration, resources, and networks, and monitor security settings across your on-premises and cloud workloads, and automatically applies your security policies to any services that you provision. Okay, that's what Azure Security Center does. Okay. So we have it here, right? As you can see here, it's not a service that is available 100% because you have to upgrade, right? So basically, you need to have a paid account. I don't have it. Okay. This is a very heavy-duty service that provides a lot of security, you know. But you have to know that it exists. It's called the Azure Security Center. And that's very, very important when it comes to recommendations, monitoring, automatic application of security policies to every resource that you provide, right? That's super important. Okay, so this is the Azure Security Center usage scenarios. Okay. So we have here that you can use security centers in the, one moment. Sorry, guy, I'm forgetting. I'm so focused on the class that sometimes I forget to put the link. This is the link for Security Center. Okay. Okay, these are the scenarios here, right? So you can use Security Center in the detect, assess, and diagnose stages of any incident response. Okay. Maybe Brian, do you want to elaborate more on incident response? Probably what you saw in your course or your company.
Well, to be honest, it's not like my job is essentially when things go bad, that's my job because they very much like to separate the type of stuff, like the idea of, you know, defense versus like recovery. And I do far more into recovery. SOCs are more like trying to prevent the worst, you know, things to happen, or at least investigate potential threats. What I do fundamentally is when, let's say, a company gets hacked, I, you know, show up at their door, I investigate everything, I lock everything down, and I essentially try to, you know, diagnose what happened, try to secure the network, back everything up multiple times, and then try to either figure out, you know, a solution to their problem. Like, hey, you have a backup? Okay, great. Like, let's just back it up and then move forward from that, or just be like, okay, cool, we need to start over. But all of that has to just do with, you know, just a certain steps. I guess these steps are really good. I mean, in terms of what I do, like we detect, we assess, we diagnose, we stabilize, and then we close. That's actually a very simple form of what I do.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, no, what I essentially do is just a small, like smidge of all that combined. But yeah, no, this, like, figuring out what happened is incredibly important in anything, even cloud. Figuring out and being able to understand and read scenarios and logs is very important to my job.
Yeah, that it doesn't happen again.
Yeah, that's what you can always hope sometimes, that the people learn their lesson.
Very time consuming.
Yeah, it is, but very, very, very well paid too. In the professional level, it's really, really, really full-time job, and then, you know, security is very, very high demand right now. Very high demand. But unfortunately, sometimes employers are looking for experience, and that's the bad part of it. You know, looking for people that have. The other day, I saw a job posting. They were looking for 15 years of experience in AWS. Not AWS, I'm sorry, 15 years of experience in Azure. And I just replied to the guy and said, how is that possible? Are you looking for someone that has 15 years of experience in Azure when Azure was founded in 2010? And it's been there for only 10 years. What are you looking for? That's crazy. So sometimes they are trying to look for someone that is an entry-level position, and they're looking for 8 years of experience. That's crazy. But, you know, other than that, security is a very in high demand right now. Okay, so basically the steps are clear. This is self-explanatory that you first you have to detect. You have to have a system in place that detects, whatever security issue, and then you have to assess it. You analyze it. You examine the issue. Then you diagnose it. This is what it is, right? Now we're gonna stabilize it. We're gonna resolve this issue, and then we close the issue and move on. That's basically what you do. Of course, that is very simple. It's easier said than done, but that's basically what you do. It's more complex along the way, but this is simply what you do, right? So the security center is used to offer recommendations so you can enhance security. That's what happens here. Okay. So the key vault, very, very important if you want to save your credentials, your database credentials, your application credentials. Never, never, never store your credentials on a database. Don't store your credentials in a blob, in a container. Don't store your credentials in an application. Store your credentials in the key vault. That's the place where you store your secrets. Okay, that's when you store your secrets. Okay, so you store application secrets in a centralized cloud location to securely control access permissions and access logging. Of course, the key vault itself has security to protect those credentials that are they're supposed to be secure in the key vault. Okay, so the key vault is security for your applications, but it also has security to, protect whatever's inside the key vault. Right? So there you can manage the secrets, the credentials. You can manage the keys. If you have a key, a private key or something, like you have a symmetric key or something you're using, HSM. In this case, is hardware security modules. Right there, you see there. You can store that. You can store that there. Okay. You can manage the certificates. When you have certificates, SSL certificates for your website, and you can store the secrets backed by HSMs. Okay. By the way, HSM has two types of encryption keys. It has asymmetric encryption keys. It means that it has one key for encryption and one key for decryption. Two different keys. Okay. Azure Information Protection, AIP, right? And by the way, I forgot again. I'm sorry. I continue making this, failing to do this. I'm gonna post the key vault link here. Okay, and now we go to the Azure Information Protection, AIP. Okay, this is not free. Okay, you have to buy it, right? And I'm gonna just provide you the link where you can purchase it. Well, actually, not where you can purchase it, where you can see how to purchase it. Okay, so it classifies and protects documents and emails by applying labels. Okay, automatically using rules and conditions defined by administrators, so you can do some filtering, some conditioning, to protect. It's manually done by users, and you can accomplish this by combining automatic and manual methods guided by recommendations. So this is done after you have some recommendations by this guy here. The security center is the one that gives you recommendations. So then you can go ahead and have some protection there. Okay. I'm gonna post the links for the purchasing details and also for the AIP itself. Okay. It's almost time for the break, guys. Just 3 more minutes.
Does AIP do encryption of emails or attachments?
It does. Okay. It's encrypted.
Okay. And if you had like an attachment that was in an email that had like personal information data, it would encrypt that as well?
Yes, it does.
Okay.
This is heavy duty. This is heavy duty protection. Maybe I just posted. Let me see if I posted that. I think. Okay, well, yes, I posted it in the chat. The links. Now we have the Azure ATP, Azure Advanced Threat Protection. This is a cloud-based security solution for identifying, detecting, and investigating advanced threats, compromised identities, and malicious insider actions. So this will protect your infrastructure both from the outside and the inside, okay? You never know who's your enemy. Maybe your enemy is sleeping with you. Your enemy maybe is around you. You never know, right? So Azure is not confident that everybody is honest, right? So they created this this protection type to even protect the company from people working in the company, okay? Because you never know. You never know what's going to happen. Sometimes your enemy is just right beside you and you don't know. So they don't trust anyone. When it comes to securing the infrastructure and the applications of customers to, protect themselves as well, they do whatever it takes, right? Sorry. Okay. So a dedicated portal for monitoring and responding to suspicious activity. There's one dedicated portal just for you guys, for your account. That is only for that. It's not a general portal. It's a portal for you only, right? When you have this type of protection. The sensors installed directly onto your domain controllers. You have sensors in your domain controllers, and the cloud service runs on Azure infrastructure. So you have three main features. You have a dedicated portal, you have sensors, and you have cloud service. All right. So this is not free, guys. Okay. This is not free. You don't have to become an expert in security, but at least you should know that this protection exists. Okay. Let me copy the link to that guy. And I see in the chat they're talking about the deciders. Those are the most difficult ones to catch because, we tend to trust them because they're working with us. Okay. Azure governance methodologies. Okay. Azure policy. Okay. And guys, it's 7:56. We can continue with this after we finish the break. So let's take a 10 minutes break and let's come back at 8:06. Thank you. Guys, we're back.
Yep.
I'm gonna post a form again for those who haven't done the attendance yet. Post it again, is right there. Okay, very important, guys, that you do that. Okay, so we continue. Now we have the Azure governance methodologies. So we have policies here. And what is a policy? A policy is nothing else than a JSON document that grants or restricts access to resources. Okay. So with the policies, you stay compliant with your corporate standards and services level agreements, also known as SLAs, by using policy definitions to enforce rules and effects and for your Azure resources. Okay, so there's one section here. If you type policy, then you have something here in the policies. And then you can have assignments, or you can have definitions right here. Okay, that's for policies. You can create a definition. Assignment is say that you want to assign a policy. You can do some exclusions here. Okay, something that you want to exclude. Right. I have here the resources here that I've created, the security groups and all that. Not security groups, the resource groups, right? And then you can add the selected scope as well. You can have a policy definition here. Okay. You can put probably tagging. You want to do something in what tag. You want to say the required tag and its value on resources. And then you can assign this policy to a particular resource group. And then every single resource that is created inside that resource group has to have a tag. So you can enforce that by using a policy. Okay. Maybe MFA. You can have MFA. MFA should be enable accounts with right permissions on your subscription. NFA should be enabled accounts with only permission. So you can enforce rules with your policies. Okay, you give it a name here, and just create, preview, and create. Okay, that's what a policy is. You can enforce things with a policy. So like it says here, enforce rules and effects for your Azure resources. Evaluates and identifies Azure resources that do not comply with your policies. Okay, it's like I said before, if you enforce tagging, it's gonna tell you, this is not in line with the policy. You have to add a tag. Okay. It provides a built-in policy and initiative definitions under categories such as storage, networking, compute, security center, and monitoring. And of course, these are general topics that have a lot of resources inside, like storage, networking, compute. Right? So this is what a policy is. It's a document that you create, right? And the document contains rules that will be enforced based on whatever you write in the policy. Okay? This is the link for Azure policies. I put it on the chat. And we continue. All right, so how do you implement an Azure policy? You create the policy definition, you assign the definition to resource, and you review the evaluation results. Okay. So our definition is right here. Okay, sorry, one moment. Okay, definition is that we saw before. It's right here. So you can create a definition. Same thing, the definition location. It's gonna be in your subscription. You're gonna give it a name, right? And then you're gonna create that. You see, this is the JSON document that I'm talking about. Okay. And the policy will be created based on whatever is chosen. I have a lot of services here, for example, compute. And then you can save that. And then you're going to have a definition there. Now, then after that, what you have to do is just assign the definition to a resource right here, and then review the evaluation results. So a policy definition expresses what to evaluate and what action to take. Like we saw here, it has some actions here. Okay. You implement your policy definitions by assigning to a group of resources, a resource group, and review the results. Results are either compliant or not compliant. So whenever you run this policy, it's going to tell you if the resource is compliant with your corporate standards. Okay. Policy initiatives. And of course, I'm going to give you the link for a policy. So a policy, guys, a policy evaluation, it happens about once an hour. That's, the evaluation here is once an hour, typically. Which means that if you make any changes to your policy definitions and create a policy assignment, then it will be reevaluated in your resources within the hour. Okay? So it's not going to be evaluated right after you do it. It's once every hour. They're not templates, they are policies. Okay? A policy is a JSON document. You're not creating any resource with that. It's just a policy that contains rules. Okay? Yeah, you could call it template, but a template it's more of a resource. So you create resources with a template. All right? But yeah, why not? It's a template, but it's not what they call it a template. Okay? But it's a document in JSON format that is read by the system, and then it will be enforced and implemented. Maybe. I would call it a document. Okay? Document is the word that it is most commonly used for policies. It's a document. So a policy initiative, it's work with Azure policies. We saw here. Right here. Azure subscription, and then you can do the same here. Just put to here tagging, for example, similar to a policy. So what it does is a group of multiple policy definitions into a single unit. What it does is track compliance at a higher scope. For example, one initiative can monitor all of your Azure Security Center recommendations. So it's more encompassing than a policy. Their initiative assignments are assigned to a specific scope and reduce the need to make initiative definition for each scope. Okay? And scope is a range that we cover certain resources. Sometimes the scope is a subscription. Okay? You have several subscriptions. You can have more than one. Guys? You can have more than one subscription. So that could be a scope. Role-based access control, RBAC, is a fine-grained access management. Segregate duties within your team and grant only the amount of access to users that they need to perform their jobs. Enables allowing or disallowing access to the Azure portal and controlling access to resources. So we have the Azure Active Directory, we have users, apps, and user groups. We have the subscription and resource groups here. Guys, who can help me? Who can help me to create a role-based access control here? What's going on here? One moment, I'm trying to load my virtual machine. For some reason, the virtual machine was not created properly. Okay. I'm gonna delete it. Okay. So I don't, it's not giving me what I need. Okay. So guys, who can create a role-based access control here for this resource group? Let me let me come here to Active Directory. I want well, let me test you. Let me test you. Let me test you now. Let me give you a test, a little test here. One moment. Okay, guys. Oh yeah, skip who. I'm gonna open my CLI here. I'm gonna open my CLI here, and I'm gonna give someone control my screen. Who can create a user in my CLI, in my account? Who can volunteer and create a user in my account? Anyone? Any volunteer? Sudo is for Linux, Alva, not for Windows. Okay, someone, need someone. Azure CLI, someone. Who can create a user here? No one? No one remembers what we did? Yeah, but I need someone to have access to my computer and do it.
AZ add user, create display name, password, user principal name.
Okay, can you do it? You want to do it? You want to do it?
I'll try.
Ask me for control. I'll give you control. Royer? Okay. So let me grab the CLI. One moment. Go ahead. What is that? I can do it. I can do it, Roger. You can watch me. Because we don't have much time. So I'm gonna create a user here real quick. Thank you, Roger. Perfect. So the user was created. Okay. If I refresh this, it takes some time. It's right there. Jorge Agudo. So I want to come to the resource group, right? And I think I've done this several times. And I want to apply a role to this resource group. Can someone guide me real quick? Can someone guide me? Can someone tell me what to do? I don't know what to do. Can someone tell me?
Click on activity.
Activity log.
Mhm.
Activity log is to log everything that happens inside the resource group. Guys, we did this last week. Can someone help me?
Go access control.
Access control. What do I do now?
Role assignment. Then select the roles.
I think that you have to use the add
Add roles, yeah.
Which one I choose here?
Add role assignment.
Which one I choose here? I want to add an administrator.
The right administrator.
It doesn't exist. What is the one that exists?
Owner.
Owner?
Mhm.
Okay. Now I want to
Select the group, resource group.
no.
Select the user
Okay.
and then
Save.
yeah. And select the group, resource groups today, new resource group.
Okay. Okay. That is a role. That is a role. Based access control. Okay.
Will you do the same using the CLI?
Yes. Yes, you can do the same. Everything that you do in the portal, you can do in the CLI.
Yeah, but how do you assign the role using the CLI? Is it on a...
You have to identify the resource group.
Mhm. You have to identify the resource group, you have to identify the member ID, but what about the role? How do I assign the role to that specific user? Mm-hmm. Role assignment. Yeah, role, the second option. Okay, perfect.
Okay, let's try that. Let's see if it works. I hate when the terminal changes to that. I have to terminate it now, and then I have to open it again. Okay, so I'm gonna do this. What is the name of the resource group? Let me copy here. Assignee. Let me see here. Assignee.
Role name or ID.
An example. Okay, I think it's the principal name. Okay, Let me copy the principal name. That will be, what was the one? Pedro Agudo. What was the name that we chose? Jorge Agudo. Jorge Agudo.
Everything lowercase. Oh
Yes.
yeah, okay, because he's a okay.
Menendez,
Oh, no.
A4, email, .microsoft.com. And then here, the role name is reader. Reader. Let me give a reader. Let's see if it works now.
Maybe no, because he's already an owner. No.
No. I can give it a reader too. It's just for the sake of practicing. It worked. So
Oh,
if
you can assign multiple roles to the same person.
Yeah, of course.
Okay.
You see here, reader.
Mhm.
Your best friend, guys. Your best friend is Google. That's your best friend.
But in this case, the owner authorization is gonna override the reader. Right?
Oh, right. It doesn't make sense that way. You know, I would have to create another. Well, I have to create another resource group, and assign the role to that resource group. So because Pedro Agudo is an owner for this resource group, but it's not an owner for the subscription. It's an owner for whatever happens in that resource group, but it's not the owner for another resource group. Okay? So I can make him an owner for this resource group, for example. Okay? So I can just copy the same thing, but now the resource group is going to be this one, and then it's going to be an owner for that one, and the role instead of reader is going to be owner. Right? So now Pedro Agudo is the owner of the other resource group, and he's the owner of this resource group too. You see? Of this new VNet GRG. So he can do whatever he wants.
And the same apply if you wanna create a role for a specific
it says here, scope
inside the resource group.
Yeah. It says here, scope this resource. Whatever is created inside this resource group, he's the owner. He's an administrator.
Good.
Right? Because resource logs we saw before, right? So it's log types: read, update, and delete. We have these three log types. Cannot delete. When it's read, you can read it, you can update, and you cannot delete. Okay? So because it says cannot delete. When it's read only, you can read it, update, because it's read only, you cannot modify anything, and you cannot delete either. Those are operations that will affect the resource. These two, update and delete. Read doesn't affect anything. That's why you can always read. It's just view the resource. Okay? So resource logs is restrictions that you put on the resource. You have two types, cannot delete and read only, and they will be enforced at all times until you delete it. Okay? And what is the purpose of this? To protect your Azure resources from accidental deletion or modifications. Sometimes people make mistakes and they delete the resources. And that will be a very, very, very bad thing if the resource is extremely important. Okay? So manage logs as subscription, resource group, or individual resource levels. You can have logs at different levels, at the entire subscription, at the resource group, or at the individual level. So if you want nothing to be deleted in your entire subscription, you can apply a lock to your subscription. Now, if you want everything to be deleted except whatever it is inside a resource group, you can apply a lock at that resource group level. But if you want to delete everything except one particular resource, like say, let's say a virtual machine, you apply a lock to that virtual machine. Okay. I think that this resource group has a lock here. See, you can make this resource group undeletable. But maybe you can find the subscription here, right? And the subscription right here. I hadn't seen it. It's right here, resource locks. You can add a lock here, and then you can put delete here, and then say nothing can be deleted. Okay. Okay, nothing can be deleted. So if I go there to my resource group and I try to delete, let's say I want to delete this resource group. I think I have to put the name of the resource group if I want to delete it. Here. It will fail. It says the resource group network is locked and can be deleted. Click here to manage locks for this resource group. And this is the resource group. If I want to delete another thing, let's say that I want to delete this network watcher. Okay, I want to delete this guy. I don't have anything here. But maybe if I want to delete this cloud thing, this resource group here, if I want to delete it, you see, it cannot be deleted. Nothing can be deleted at the subscription level, right? Now, if I remove that subscription level lock, I come here to resource locks and I delete this guy. Then when I come back to home and I look for this particular resource group and I try to delete it, and I click delete, boom, it's been deleted. Okay, so the lock works. It works at the subscription level, at the group resource level, and at the individual level. So bear that in mind. Don't forget that. Okay, and the purpose of that is to protect your resources from accidental deletion. Okay. Azure Blueprints, it create reusable. This is like a template, right? It creates reusable environment definitions that can recreate your Azure resources and apply your policies instantly. It helps audit and trace your deployments and maintain compliance using built-in tools and artifacts. Associate blueprints with specific Azure DevOps build artifacts and release pipelines for rigorous tracking. So it's the blueprints like a map, right? It's like a map to create resources. Right? I just posted the blueprint URL. Yes, Alva, everything that is done in the subscription will show in the logs. Everything, every single operation. Is that what you're asking?
So is blueprints like if you have, if you needed to create certain types of users, that would be like you wanted like a set of users which would have unique security definitions by department. Is that what you would do in Blueprint? Is that how it works?
Let me show you here. Hold on. So this is repeatable, right? So it's a template. Okay. Now, simplify large-scale Azure deployments by packaging key environment artifacts, such as Azure Resource Manager. And what is the Azure Resource Manager? The one that has all the templates for creating resources. Okay. Role-based access controls and policies right here in a single blueprint definition. Easily apply the blueprint to the new subscription and environments, and fine-tune control and management through versioning. So how does it work? By the way, it's free. It is also used for migration. Okay, you can have all your infrastructure in blueprints and migrate everything. Create a blueprint definition from scratch or with a detailed sample. Assign a blueprint to subscription and apply cloud governance best practices. So if I click here, okay. So blueprints enable quick creation of governed subscriptions. This allows cloud architects to design environments that comply with organizational standards and best practices, enabling your app teams to get to production faster. Let's say here, you can create one in the portal. You have a link here. I don't think that you create users with the blueprints, because a user is not a resource. A user is something that has to do with Active Directory. It's not a resource. See if it is not a resource that you don't put a lock on a user. You can put a policy, right, or a role, but you don't put a lock. Because you can put locks on resources. So it's what I told Anand the other day. You don't create resources. You don't create users as resources. Okay. For users, you can extend the Active Directory from the on-premises. But for resources, services, then you use a blueprint. A blueprint contains a template that you can use to create the resources, the entire infrastructure in a blueprint. Okay? It's like a map to find the place. Okay? Similar. And of course, you can create it in the portal, you can create it in the PowerShell. Can you imagine how much code you have to write in the PowerShell or CLI to move your infrastructure? But it's doable, right? And sometimes if you're an expert in CLI, it's going to be much, much faster in the CLI than it is in the portal. Of course, the portal it apparently looks easier because it's visual. You can see what you're doing. But in terms of efficiency and quick deployment, the CLI is the king. So to answer your question, I don't know if that answered your question, Perla, but you don't create users with that. because the user is not a resource.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, a user doesn't do any, it doesn't perform an action or operation. A service does. A user manipulates the action. Okay, subscription governance. There are mainly three aspects to consider in relation to creating and managing subscriptions. Billing, reports, and chargeback can be generated per subscription. Access control. A subscription is a deployment boundary for Azure resources and can set up role-based access control. We just saw role-based access control. And subscription limits. Subscriptions are also bound to some hard limitations. When it says hard, you cannot do anything about it. It's just restricted. That's it. When it says soft limitations, you can call Azure or you can open a case and request for remove the limitations and probably increase your limits. Okay. So if there's a need to go over those limits, then additional subscription may be needed. If you hit a hard limit, there's no flexibility. Like I said, no, it's hard. There's nothing you can do. Okay. So where can you see billing and access control? We just could consolidated billing. I think it's not billing and cost management and billing. Okay. So you can see here whatever you're expending and what resource is being used. Okay. As long as you see this number 0, you're okay. When you see this number that is less than 100 or less than 200, something is being used. Okay. So be careful with that. Maybe you can click on an invoice. An invoice can give you more details about it. Or maybe cost analysis. Okay. In cost analysis, you can go by resource group. Okay. By region as well, right? By region, by subscription. And then it gives you a breakdown of your expenses so far.
So what would be the business case for having multiple subscriptions instead of having multiple resource groups?
Maybe more control on the billing. I don't know exactly what case would be that. Maybe you want to have a subscription for HR. Maybe you want to have a subscription for development, and then you want to have that centralized there. The expenses for a particular department centralized. It's just a personal decision. In my case, I've never had more than one. But it has to do with the control, more control, right? Because every department will incur different charges, okay? So if you have a subscription for a particular department, then everything is centralized, it's accumulated there. It has nothing to do with the other subscription, okay? So that's a reason that I can think of. There might be other reasons that I'm not sure why they would choose another subscription. Because this is what you said. If you have different resource group, what would you need another subscription? Maybe if you want to have more control on the billing and to be more organized, perhaps. But we can Google that. A subscription is an agreement with Microsoft to use one or more Microsoft's cloud platform or services for which charges accrue based on either a per-use license fee or a cloud-based resource consumption. Microsoft Software as a Service, cloud offering, Microsoft 365, that's a type of subscription. And Dynamic 365, that's another type of subscription. Charge per user, licenses, fees. So Microsoft Platform as a Service, PaaS, Infrastructure as a service cloud offerings Azure charge based on cloud resource consumption. So I think that most of it comes down to money. Okay. You can also use a trial subscription, but the subscription expires after a specific amount of time, or consumption charges. You can convert a trial subscription to a pay. That's what we're doing right now. We have a trial subscription. You can convert it anytime you want to a paid subscription. Organizations can have multiple subscriptions for Microsoft Cloud offerings. Figure 1 shows a single organization that has multiple subscriptions, Microsoft 365 subscription, and a dynamic 365 subscription and multiple Azure subscriptions. Okay. So maybe a subscription for people that use Microsoft 365, another subscription for people that use Dynamics 365. These are subscription types offerings where you have licenses, 100 licenses here. So it has to do with charges, money. It has to do with a particular license, like you see here, or just the typical Azure subscription, where you use all your resource and all that. Okay. So scenario, save money, centralize the charges, and use particular licenses. For example, Microsoft 365 and Dynamics 355. That's the scenario. And it was a good question, by the way. I think that answers your question, Perla, right?
Yes. Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, so tagging. Yeah, like we spoke before, tagging is super important. Don't forget, tagging for money is important. So it provides metadata for Azure resources. How can you find resources? Easily with tags. Okay, tagging. It locally organizes resources into taxonomy structure. Consists of a name value pair. A tag is a name value pair. And it's very useful for rolling up billing information. Whenever you want to print a report, a billing report, we just put by tag and just put HR. And it's gonna give you all the charges related with HR. Okay? Tagging is super important. Don't forget that. It's like here, for example, we have owner, Joe, department marketing, environment production, cost center marketing. Okay. We're not tagging our resources when you create, because that's not important right now. But guys, understand that when you create resources, always tag your resources so you can be more organized. Yes, you can create functions in the CLI, but Alba, it's better to create them in a template. In a template is better. So you can run the template and you can create the resources. I don't know if you know about AWS CloudFormation. So in Azure is the Azure Template Manager. Okay. So Azure Service Health. Okay. Evaluate the impact of Azure service issues with personalized guidance and support notification and issue resolution updates. Components of Azure Service Health. Azure Status provides a global overview of Azure Services state of health. So this is the one that gives you the health of the entire Azure, the Azure Status. That's the one. Don't forget that. Is the overview of the global Azure infrastructure. You, me, all the users, everybody in the entire world. That's the Azure Status. Now the service health is more personalized. It's for you guys, for you, all the resources that affect you as a customer. Not the entire infrastructure, is you, the resources that you're using, right? So it has a customizable dashboard for tracking the state of services in the regions you use, right? Now, Azure Resource Health can diagnose and obtain support for Azure services issues affecting your resources. So Azure Status is for the entire infrastructure. Service Health is for the region that you're using. And Azure Resource Health is for the resources that you use. Okay? So don't forget that these three components of the Azure Service Health. Monitoring applications and services. Integrate Azure Monitor with other Azure services to improve your data monitoring capabilities and gain better insights into your operations. Like I said before, this Azure Monitor service is the one that gives you a panoramic view of the health of your resources. It's very useful. It can analyze, respond, visualize, integrate. Why? Because you can have a dashboard and you can visualize the health of your resources. You can integrate that with other resources. You can respond by sending alerts to your subscribers, and then they can act upon the alert. You can analyze, you can see the containers, the virtual machines, you can see all the resources, get insights for the applications. You can see all that with Monitor. And if that rings the bell, that's CloudWatch in AWS. Okay? So super important. So whenever they ask you, hey, how would you improve your data monitoring capabilities? Integrating with other resources, visualizing with Power BI, business intelligence, all that. How would you respond with alerts? Analyze the health, all those keywords, that's Azure monitoring. Okay. So lesson 7 would be privacy, compliance, and data protection standard. Okay. So this is more of you know, the compliance that Azure has to show. Okay. Because the fact that you are compliant doesn't mean that Azure is compliant. Azure is also, you know, audited. It doesn't matter if it is the cloud provider, they have to respond to higher organizations with compliance. Okay. So remember that you're dealing with data from clients. That data has to be compliant, right? And who's behind that data? Even though Azure is not dealing with the data, Azure is behind the data because that data is protected after you implement the protection by Azure itself. So Azure has to be compliant, right? So Microsoft provides the most comprehensive set of compliance offerings, including certification and attestations of any cloud service provider. Some compliance offerings include, and this is not limited to Azure only. Every single cloud provider, they have to have compliance offerings. So they have this CJIS, Criminal Justice Information Services. They have to be compliant with that. They have to be compliant with CSA STAR certification. They have to have the General Data Protection Regulation, GDPR. They have to have HIPAA, which is very, has to do with confidentiality and protection of the consumer's data. That's super important. It stands for Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act. They have to be compliant with ISO or IEC 20018, the National Institute of Standards Technology, NIST. They have to be compliant with all that. Okay, so this discuss the questions below that the students or you students may have, right? So the question is, for example, questions that you may ask of a potential provider when you use a potential provider. So how compliant are you as a cloud provider when it comes to handling sensitive data? So that's a question that you can ask a provider before you migrate to their platform, okay, to their infrastructure. So how compliant are you when it comes to handling sensitive data? Another question that you can ask is, how compliant are the services offered by you? It's not only you as a cloud provider, it's your services. How compliant are they? Are they compliant with these 6 offerings? Okay. The other question is, how can I deploy my own cloud-based solutions to scenarios that have accreditation or compliance requirements? Okay. So I'm gonna paste. Let me see here. I think I don't know. Sure, if you. I don't know if this is clickable for you guys. Clickable. Just one moment. All right, let me put it here. No, it's not clickable. Okay. Okay, we have to find the the Microsoft privacy statement provides openness and honesty about how Microsoft handles the user data. Guys, I have to emphasize this. It's kind of creepy when someone controls your data. Okay, that freaks out some people. Okay, so one of the things that people think about when they're thinking about migrating to the cloud is how reliable is this cloud provider? How reliable is or are they? Can I trust them? Can I give them my data? Right? So it's kind of, freaking, and it freaks you out because they're going to handle your data. So the cloud provider has to be as open and honest as possible so customer can feel confident when moving to the cloud. That has to be very, very clear from the get-go. Okay? So the statement provides openness and honesty about how Microsoft handles the user data collected from its products and services, because no one wants their data to be used without their permission. Some companies, they sell your data, they sell your information to other vendors, and then you start getting emails and phone calls and things like that. Okay, so Microsoft has a statement that makes it clear: we protect your data. We don't sell your data. We don't mess up with your data. Your data is protected. Your information is well protected with us. And you have to prove it. You have to prove it because there are many people that depend on you. So you have to prove it. And they have regulations and compliance and things that, speak by themselves and show that Microsoft Azure is a reliable cloud provider. Okay? So it explains what data is processed, right? It explains how it is processed. And it explains what purposes the data is used for. Okay? So you can be clear from the beginning how our relationship, you as a customer, me as a provider, is going to be. Okay? So we lay all the cards on the table, right? And then everything is clear from the very beginning, right? So that's what the statement says. There's a trust center. As you can see, it's all about trust, because, there has to be a very profound trust relationship here. There has to be. Okay. So the Trust Center, you can learn about security, privacy, compliance, policies, features, and practices across Microsoft's cloud products. So what does the Trust Center website provide? There's a website, which I'm gonna paste here in the chat. Okay, so it provides in-depth expert information. There are many experts behind this. Curated list of recommended resources arranged by topic. Role-specific information for business managers, administrators, engineers, risk assessors, privacy officers, and legal teams. Okay, guys, Microsoft takes security very seriously. Okay? This is one of the main concerns Well, two of the main concerns, there are many, but two of the main concerns when moving to the cloud is first cost. How much is it going to cost me? Because I don't want to spend more money than I'm spending now. Right? I want to save money. And if you're showing me these statistics, you have to prove it. Okay. So cost, and the other one is security. There are many more, but how much I'm going to spend and how secure my data is going to be, my information is going to be, and how hard or how hardened your security system is. Is this, is it breachable or not? How breachable it is. What are the odds of your system being breached? Okay, so things like that, is what business owners think about when they're moving to the cloud. Cost and security. Cost is important because sometimes you want to be so secure that you're spending a lot of money. The more you implement security, the more money you have to pay. Okay, and sometimes you put extra resources and extra security features that you don't need. Okay, so be careful when developing security in a system. You may going over the limits, or may going over whatever you need, and then you're spending money. So you are solving a problem and creating another one. Next, Service Trust Portal, STP. As you can see, it has a lot of information, right? Today, because that's security. That's important, right? So STP, Security Trust Portal, a trust center companion website for compliance. I'm gonna give you the website now. It's called Service Trust. Compliance-related publications about Microsoft Cloud Services, host the Compliance Manager service. So what can you access when you use the STP? You can access audit reports across Microsoft Cloud Services, all the audits that Microsoft has gone through, right? So you can have a guide on how to be in compliance when using the cloud services, Azure. And you can see publications about trust and how Microsoft Cloud Services protect your data. And more protection. You have to, they really want you to be sure that you're safe in their hands. Okay, that's the website for STP, for Service Trust Portal. Compliance Manager. So the Compliance Manager is just a dashboard that provides a summary of your data protection and compliance status, as well as recommendations to improve your data protection and compliance status. So the customer actions provided in Compliance Manager are recommendations only. Each organization must evaluate the effectiveness of these recommendations in their respective regulatory environment prior to implementation. So Compliance Manager recommendations should not be interpreted as a guarantee of compliance. So this is not the only way you have to know if your services are compliant. This is one of the ways, right? So this is not a guarantee that your services are in compliance. Okay. So Cloud Compliance Manager is a workflow-based risk assessment tool in the Trust Portal. Okay, Trust Portal. Right here in the Trust Portal that supports your organization's regulatory compliance activities. The features that it has: assign, track, verify your compliance and assessment related activities. Okay. Provides a score by evaluating your compliance status. There's a score there. Okay. It stores and manages your compliance related artifacts in secure digital repository. So guys, you can just run this guy and it will immediately tell you which resource is in compliance and which one is not. Okay. But like I said before, it's not the only one, it's not a guarantee. So you have to put other services in, in compliance as well, in place for compliance. Azure Government Services meets the security and compliance needs of the U.S. federal agencies. So this has to do with, the government more than anything else. But you just need to know that Azure has a dedicated portion for the government. Okay? So this is for federal agencies, state, and local governments and their solutions providers. So what does it do? It separates instance of Azure, has a separate dedicated instance of Azure, physically isolated from the non-US government deployments. Your deployment is going to be isolated from theirs, or theirs going to be isolated from yours. You have nothing to do with them. We have nothing to do with them. It's just dedicated for them. Accessible only to screen authorized personnel, people with clearance, right? They have a clearance, a government clearance to be able to access this, okay? So there's some standards here, compliance standards like the FedRAMP, which is the U.S. Federal Risk and Authorization Management. It's a program that is standardized approach for assessing, monitoring, and authorizing cloud computing products and services under the U.S. Federal Information Security Management Act, FISMA. That's what it stands for. Also NIST, what is NIST? It's the National Institute of Standards and Technology that standardizes, in this case, 800.171, standardizes security requirements for handling U.S. federal control on classified information. ITAR. ITAR is the International Traffic in Arms Regulation related to managing the export and import of defense articles. The other one is IRS 1075, U.S. Internal Revenue Service publication of 1075 contains the guidelines of the U.S. government agencies to protect federal tax information. DoD L2, L4, L5 is the U.S. Department of Defense, that's DoD. Levels 2, 4, and 5, the are security authorization requirements for cloud service providers that host DoD information, systems, and applications. And then last but not least, CJIS is the U.S. Criminal Justice Information Services policies that establish security requirements and controls to safeguard criminal justice information. So, guys, Azure is compliant with all this. Okay? As you can see, it has a lot of compliance standards. Okay. And finally, we also have Azure China 21 via net. Okay. And what is that? It's the China first foreign public cloud service provider in compliance with government regulations. What are the features of this public cloud service provider? Is physically separated instance of Azure cloud services located in China only, and prepared by 21 via net Azure China 21 via net. Okay, it's only for China. So guys, you need to understand that there's one Azure dedicated portion for China only. Okay? And it's called China via net. Okay? So I'm gonna post the link for this. Okay. And that's it for the PowerPoint today. It's been a long PowerPoint now. Let me check something here. Let me see if there's a quiz for today's class. Just one moment. I think that we can stop the live.